Good evening. Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephanie Matthews, and on behalf of the Board of Student Advisors and Dean Minow, I'd like to welcome you to the final round of the Ames Moot Court competition. The case before the court tonight, Springfield versus Humans Against the Consumption of Animals, was written by Minoti Patel, Harvard Law School class of 2002. The case presents two questions. First, whether the Ames Specialty License Plate Program constitutes a hybrid of government and private speech requiring First Amendment protection. And second, assuming that at least some private speech is implicated by the Ames Specialty License Plate Program, whether the program creates a limited public forum and whether the state's rejection of the organization's message, "Meat is Murder," constituted impermissible viewpoint discrimination. Petitioner Theodora Springfield, the Executive Director of the Department of Motor Vehicle Services for the state of Ames, is represented by the Honorable Clarence Darrow team. Paul Balin, Ryan Bushell, Nico Cornell, Kate Nielsen, Ray Saley, and Will Sullivan. Kate Nielsen and Ray Saley will be making oral arguments on behalf of their team. Respondent Humans Against the Consumption of Animals, a nonprofit organization dedicated to decreasing reliance on animal products for nutritional and other purposes, is represented by the Charles Sumner team. Anna Fecker, Candace Phoenix, Colleen Rowe, Hillary Schranell, Hagen Scotton, and Tobias Tobler. Candace Phoenix and Hagen Scotton will be making oral arguments on behalf of their team. The Honorable Richard Posner of the Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit will preside as Chief Justice of this final round argument. Joining Judge Posner will be the Honorable Diane Wood of the United States Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit and the Honorable Barrington Parker of the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. No photography of any kind is allowed at any point during the argument or during the announcement of the results. Please turn off all cell phones at this time. We ask that you please remain seated while the oralists are speaking. Please hold your applause until all oralists have finished, and remember that the petitioner will make rebuttal arguments after the respondent has spoken. Best of luck to both teams, and enjoy the argument.
All rise. The Chief Justice and Associate Justices for the United States Supreme Court. Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. All persons having business before the Honorable, the United States Supreme Court are admonished to draw near and give their attention, for the court is now sitting. God save the United States and this honorable court.
Be seated. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So our case for argument, Springfield versus Humans Against the Consumption of Animals. And Ms. Nielsen, are you first? Okay. Yeah, please proceed.
Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the court. My name is Kate Nielsen. With my co-counsel, Ray Saley, I represent Theodora Springfield as petitioner. We would like to reserve 3 minutes for rebuttal. Mr. Saley will address how, even if a forum is held to have been opened, Ames's restriction of respondent's message was permissibly content-based. I will address how, in light of summum, no forum was opened. Instead, Ames's use of its property and resources to promote its message was legitimate here for 3 reasons. First, Ames, like the city in summum, controlled the message of its speech selection process. Second, license plates are a traditional place for government messages.
But look, how can you make the argument that this is government speech when the genesis of the message is with these organizations that participate in the program?
Your Honor,
I mean, it's not the government speaking, it's these organizations.
Your Honor, we think that the license plate design here, just like the monuments in summum, were privately created and were private speech at that time of creation. But when they submit it to the speech selection process, and when the government chooses messages based on the submission requirements, based on the message that the government wants to convey, and then takes ownership over those
So
messages.
your theory is sort of is a kind of a government as ventriloquist theory, that when the government mouths the words of these organizations, it somehow automatically takes on the aura of government speech.
Your Honor,
I'm confused by that.
Your Honor, I think it's actually much more than that. It's not just that Ames is mouthing the words. Ames is choosing only those license plates that represent a message that the government itself is willing to convey and that promote the government's policy goal of promoting charitable efforts in Ames.
But you could say the same thing about viewpoint discrimination. Ames is choosing only those viewpoints that it likes. I don't know why Ames cares about saving the lemurs, for example.
Your Honor, we think that the relevant question is not whether it was the most pressing priority, surely the lemurs probably are not, but whether it's a message that Ames could comfortably affix its imprimatur to comfortably support, and that the speech selection process was designed to ensure that Ames, just like the city and
do you recognize any limits on what they can approve?
Yes, Your Honor, we think that
What?
well, so
Constitutional limits.
Constitutionally, the question is whether they had control over the message, final approval
Yeah,
authority.
but can they approve? I mean, can they? Suppose you have a beef producers association in Ames, and they want a license plate that says all red-blooded Americans should eat Ames beef. So can you approve that? Would that be permissible?
Yes, Your Honor, we think that if that's the message that the government is willing.
Well, what if they say vegans are commies? That's the next step, right?
Certainly, that would not meet the statutory.
No,
I
I'm
don't
not interested in
understand
the
that at all.
statutory limitation. I'm interested in constitutional limit. You can change the statute.
Right. And constitutionally, Your Honor, we think that the
They can
government.
do that?
Can you
government-
articulate the standard that you are applying to distinguish between the Chief Justice's two hypotheticals?
Your Honor, the distinction between those two hypotheticals was statutory.
No, tell me how the next time around, when it's vegans are commies, or vegans are bad, or it's any other kind of message, what's the sorting principle?
The Constitution does not place limits on the type of message. The First Amendment does not place limits on the type of message that the government could choose to say, could choose to propagate. We do think that the government speech doctrine, though, is premised on the assumption that the government is held politically
But
accountable.
what's troublesome about it in these examples, say the vegans are commies, is a lot of people seeing these plates, they'll assume that that's just the state's view, right? Which it is, apparently. And don't you, in a situation like that, have to give the vegans some right of reply or something? No?
Your Honor, the vegans' reply there is in the court of public opinion, is in making sure that they can have newspaper articles written about this, they can place their message.
I know, you mentioned, I think, a bumper sticker. It's kind of
Yes.
pathetic, because here's the license plate, says vegans are commies. Then you have vegans are commies on the license plate. Next to it is a pathetic bumper sticker, meat is murder. That doesn't really offset the impression. That actually makes the vegans are commies really look like the official opinion of Ames. But apparently you think that's fine, that the state
Your
can say
Honor-
anything it wants, right?
Your Honor, certainly the statute here.
No, not the statute, right? Because the question is what the Constitution limits. I say you could rewrite the statute, say that Ms. Springfield has unlimited discretion to adopt state policy and to advance it by her pattern of approvals of private license plates.
And Your
Is
Honor,
that right?
yes, and the message that the government propagates can be troubling, just like a government policy can be bad. A government can choose to pass bad
what
I
policies.
want to
me
say,
is,
this doesn't look at all like government speech if we are to take summum as the measure of government speech. So where, for example, is the scarcity that we had in summum? You obviously can't pepper the grounds of the state parks or the Capitol or whatever with thousands of monuments, but where's the scarcity here?
Your Honor, this is a program that Ames must be able to manage like any other program.
But it
has costs.
collects the amount of money it needs to. It could always raise the price. If $5 for an administrative fee isn't enough, it could charge $7.
There are both the cost concerns and there are also the concerns about license plates being identified. Both of those are reasons that Ames may want to limit the size of the program under viewpoint neutrality.
But they don't have any, no part of the law makes one think that that's what's going on. In fact, you only need 500 signatures, and if Ames, as a state, is just, let's say, approximately the size of the state of Massachusetts, there are 6.4 million people who live in Massachusetts. That would be enough for 12,800 license plates that say nice things like, "We love children," or, you know, "Eat more blueberries." I just don't see how this is government speech when, as Justice Parker said, the phrase is made up by the private group, it's approved, you have all sorts of things in Exhibit J to the record. We love your heart, service above self, affordable housing, save the lemurs, you know, protect our trees. That might offend the lumber industry.
Your Honor, just like the process in Summum, we think that the government here is speaking by selecting these plates.
But they didn't select, I mean, there's no scarcity, though. The court emphasizes in Summum that the park is an area where the government needs to have that kind of control. And I see nothing whatever that shows Ames monitoring the speech here. In fact, most of the courts that have looked at this have not seen this as government speech.
Your Honor, we recognize that there's not the same physical limitation. We do believe that the managerial concerns of any government program require that Ames not be required to open it up to the infinite number of plates that would result in viewpoint neutrality.
But at the end of the day, isn't your position that this dialogue we're having with you is, for want of a better word, just academic, because this is really government speech, and you can say anything you want to? There are no constitutional limits, that can be imposed on what you choose to put on your license plates if this is government speech.
The First Amendment does not restrict what the government can say.
So your answer is yes.
Yes.
So, look, what if the people of Ames don't know the statutory criteria? So they see dairy, you know, the dairy industry and the fish, eat fish, that's fine. They don't know why meat is murder, why something like that isn't approved, right?
Your Honor, if they don't know the statutory criteria, they may not, but Ames has taken every
Well, no,
possible...
why isn't that important? Suppose they think that every one of these license plates have been approved because this is what the state believes. The state believes in eating fish and meat, and it's against meat is murder, right? Because one of your arguments is that, well, they should have tried to work it out and have a less offensive or less, you know, inflammatory vegetarian message. But do the people know that, yes, the vegetarians could get a license plate, it would just have to be worded differently?
We think they do, and we think
What makes you think they do?
Where in the program does it say that the state can suggest different wording?
Your Honor, I believe that two elements of the statute do potentially give the opportunity to rewrite and prove specific wording. That's the ability for the executive director to particularly authorize any specific text that appears on the license plate, and that's also the requirement that any final design is created by the organization working with the DMV.
Why is the director bothering to do all this if it's really government speech?
We think that Ames here has created a program and is attempting to be as open and transparent about how this program works as it can be.
But this really illustrates how unlike your program is from the one in Johan's, for example. You know, beef, it's what's for dinner. If Ames is really speaking, then it gets something that reminds it that maybe the vegans want a voice, and so they just say, eat vegan or something. They wouldn't have to fuss with all of this back and forth with the organizations.
Your Honor, the message may have been more particular in Johans, but we believe that Ames's operation here is actually far more open than the government, which did not have to identify itself.
But it doesn't look anything like the statute in Johans, you will agree. There's a statute that Congress creates. They say this is money to promote the beef industry. This is exactly what needs to be there. There's nothing like this. This is license plates that are generated from the state, from the private organizations, your 501c3 or 501c whatever organizations.
Your Honor, we do agree that it does not look as much like Johans as it looks like Summum, but we do
But
believe...
I don't think it looks like Summum either, just because of the important differences we've been discussing.
Your Honor, I think that it's the same ability for the government to be able to speak through a speech selection process as long as the requirement in Johans held, that it controls the message and has final approval authority.
So isn't your position inconsistent with Woolley against Maynard?
No, Your Honor. We believe that the holding of Woolley is that a private individual cannot be compelled to endorse the government's message, but Woolley took for granted that New Hampshire's license plate motto was a government ideological message. Here...
And he, the person who didn't want to speak that message, was allowed to put the masking tape over "Live Free or Die,"
Yes,
so
Your
that he
Honor.
did not have to speak. It shows that there's a private element in this speech.
Yes, Your Honor, and we absolutely believe that the government could not require any particular individual to buy a particular specialty license plate, but neither should an individual be able to compel the government to endorse, approve, through its official program, the particular message that the private party wants the government to speak.
Nobody has to buy the license plate who doesn't want that message to be there, but this is a particularly effective vehicle for getting an organization's message out. If you think of the number of hours people spend in their cars, it's probably second only to the number of hours they spend in front of television sets.
Your Honor, we do believe it's effective, and we believe that part of the effectiveness of this program is that anybody who buys a license plate through this program knows that the government is monitoring the funds raised through the program, that the government is ensuring that the primary purpose of the organization is to benefit Ames, and that the government is taking responsibility and saying that, yes, this message is...
Why have they excluded religious statements?
Your Honor, we think that they've excluded religious statements because they recognize that this is a government program and they don't want to entangle themselves in Establishment Clause violations. We think
Well,
that...
I don't know, on your view, but they...
On your view, choose life should be fine. The government does all sorts of things. It only funds, it doesn't fund abortions, it does all sorts of things.
Your Honor, although the government could choose to craft a program that would say something that might be controversial, we think that the government speech doctrine also allows the government to do as it has done here in a program that's creating a neutral, benign...
Let me ask you this. At what point in this process did this slogan, "Meat is murder," become government speech? I mean, the organization presumably, walked in the door with this moniker they wanted on the license plate, and there was an application process and a vetting process and so forth and so on, and then ultimately we have the problem that brought us here. When did it turn into government speech?
Your Honor, we believe it turned into government speech when Ames exercised its final approval authority, demonstrating its control over the message in accordance with its submission requirements, and then placed this on its license plates with its name at top.
All right, and so I want to ask you, following up on the non-controversial point, why do you think that supporting the Darwinian Society is non-controversial?
Your Honor, we don't know what that we believe license plate looked like. We think that Ames's intent to avoid religious entanglement is clear from its rejection of the Catholic League.
But you're avoiding the question because it's the Ames Darwinian Society. It says, we believe, and the proceeds go to maintaining the dinosaur exhibit. Now, there's some people who don't think that evolution happened.
Right.
Your Honor, we agree that someone could bring an Establishment Clause violation if they believe that the government was entangling itself.
It doesn't have to be Establishment Clause. It's just controversial subject matter, in your opinion.
Your Honor, we believe that Ames's intent, in looking at these license plates, pages 31 through 33 of the Joint Appendix, it's clear that Ames has attempted as much as possible to make this a benign program. if there is a
Well,
particular...
benign, but you know, but the vegetarians, they're very upset by this. Why do you think it's benign for them?
Your Honor, may I answer the question?
Yes,
My time
of
is up.
course. Yeah.
Your Honor, my co-counsel will actually be discussing precisely this. We do think that under the government speech doctrine, the government must be able to determine what speech is coming from its program. And my co-counsel will address that.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Honors.
So we hear next from Mr. Seeley. Seeley, am I pronouncing that correct?
It's Saley, but... Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the Court. Over the last 6 years, Ames has produced specialty license plates featuring messages like "Protect Our Trees" and "Visit Historic Ames." The respondent now
And we
asks...
believe.
That's correct, Your Honor. The Ames did approve the "We Believe" plate, and as my co-counsel noted, it's unclear what the circumstances surrounding the approval of that message are.
But you can't run away from the "We Believe" plate. They've decided to endorse the views of people who think that evolution happened.
Well, we certainly don't think it's a problem that the government has endorsed that particular message. The extent to which that...
It just blows a hole in the idea that you're trying to steer away from from controversial subject matters, and it also suggests that if we think this is not government speech, you certainly are favoring one viewpoint over another.
Well, Your Honor, we don't think that the "We Believe" plate indicates in any way that Ames has attempted to favor one viewpoint over the respondent's particular message. So, first of all, we don't think that, although a challenge might be raised...
What would they do? You have one, support our troops. What if someone wanted to have a license plate that says, bring our troops home?
Your Honor, I think if Ames, because we believe this is ultimately a government speech program where Ames was actively endorsing the specific messages...
No, I don't get anything out of the term government speech.
Well, okay, so if this court finds that a forum has been established, we do
I don't
think...
get anything out of forums either.
Okay.
So what, can you put it in common sense terms? What is it?
Of course, Your Honor.
So suppose, you know, some people want us to get out of Afghanistan. They have their bring our troops home. So what does Ames do? Does Ames have a foreign policy or what?
Well, it doesn't necessarily have a foreign policy, but I think it's permitted...
illegal, actually, for states to have foreign policy.
That's correct, Your Honor.
As Massachusetts particularly knows.
I think in that case, what we have to look to is the purposes of the program in the first place. What Ames was trying to do here, as it carefully notes in its statute...
I'm asking you concretely about bring our... if they've approved support our troops, do they have to approve bring our troops home?
Again, I don't think in this particular program it has to, Your Honor. I think what Ames has tried to do here is create a program where the government was opening itself up to message submissions, and where the government could then decide to endorse particular messages.
But you know, let's take a step back. Suppose we were really just talking about a public park, and Ames said, we'll let people come onto the public park with banners that say, support our troops. But we won't let people come onto the public park with banners that say, bring the troops home. I take it that's very clearly an unconstitutional move.
That would be, Your Honor.
On Ames's part. So the question is, why isn't this the same thing?
Well, a public park has been recognized by this court to be a traditional venue
That's
for
a circular
unfettered...
answer. I mean, we're trying to figure out if these license plates, which are, as I said, a billboard that most people in modern society see a lot more of than they see of public parks or they see of all sorts of other venues. Why, in fact, is it different from the public park?
Well, first of all, we think that license plates are simply not traditionally a means for private speech.
Why does it matter whether it's traditional? And now what are you going to freeze the law in the 19th century, you know, or what?
I don't think that's what this court has to do, Your Honor. I think what it should
it does.
recognize...
Okay. We won't recognize electronic media, right?
Well, I
We
think...
can censor Twitter. Is that the argument?
I don't think that's the argument, Your Honor.
Untraditional.
I think when the government looks
Why does
at...
tradition, why does tradition cut?
Well, I think what tradition gets us is analyzing whether a particular means of communication is seen to be a means by which private entities can communicate. Since license plates are not primarily used for that purpose and used primarily for identification.
Right?
We don't think so, Your Honor.
But they are now. There are people who probably have license plates that say Harvard Law School, and there certainly are people who have license plates that say Go Longhorns or other sorts of things. People have license plates that say choose life in some states. They have license plates that say save our children against childhood abuse. People make all sorts of use of license plates for messages.
That's right, Your Honor, and I think this court should also recognize that if the state wanted to completely eliminate a specialty license plate program and prohibit all messages, it would certainly be allowed to do so.
Could it prohibit bumper stickers?
They couldn't prohibit bumper stickers, Your Honor.
They could?
They could not.
Why not? That's not traditional. No
It's
bumper
not traditional.
stickers in the 19th century.
It's not traditional, but I think it's clear that
Well,
in
you
the case
said
of
tradition was important.
it's important, but not the only
why-
factor that can protect speech,
Pardon?
Your Honor. I don't think that the fact that a means of communication is traditionally open to the public is the only way that speech can be protected. However,
But the problem here, which is why tradition isn't helping much, is if you look at the statute that Ames has passed, it is a statute that opens up the license plate for messages from a certain set of private groups. Nobody's arguing about whether the group here fits those criteria. They do. They're a charitable group. They devote their monies to charitable uses. So when the state says, in a sense, we're building a new park, we're building a new place where people can express themselves, why do they get to restrict the content?
well, I think if this were more like a park, the government wouldn't even be able to discriminate on the basis of whether a program was charitable. So it's clear that the government has established a program where it's envisioning some level of
But
selectivity.
you just said bumpers. I mean, a car doesn't look like a park, but you just said bumper stickers are sacrosanct.
Well, I think that a bumper sticker, to the extent obviously it's not blurring the license plate number or
No, I
something like
understand.
that,
There would be.
it would be
Time, place,
considered private speech, and in the way that the
Well,
government,
wait a second. Why? Why?
because it would be,
What's the difference between that and the license plate?
the difference between that and the
And the
license
and
plate.
there's some reference somewhere to a license plate frame, whatever that is. But presumably, if it's some a holder for the
Yeah, it's a
and
holder for the license
you can put words on that. You have a message on that.
You could, Your
Or
Honor.
A huge frame, maybe, but that's okay.
But that's okay, right?
That would be okay, Your Honor. And I think the key distinction here is
Becomes
that
metaphysical. I mean, this sort of sacred surface of the license plate, right?
I think the key
That's the
distinction.
government. The government owns that surface.
That's right, Your Honor, and I think that is the key
Okay, that's
distinction.
your position.
Because a license plate does have the name of the state emblazoned at its very top, and because the program in this case has been designed specifically to allow organizations to apply for Ames's approval, we think it's very clear that in this case the messages that appear directly on the license plate belong to the state of Ames, and that Ames is entitled to make selections in what types of views it wants to
But
do.
the
Well, one of the
emblazonment-
reasons, one of the bases that your client used for turning down this license plate was not that it was not traditional or anything of that sort, but that it was, in her words, inappropriate and not normal.
Well, we do think, Your Honor.
What is the what's Ms. Springfield's authority to make these normative judgments?
Well, first of all, we think that Ms. Springfield has experience running a DMV program.
So
She has
knows
experience
what's
being a
normal and
vegan?
what's not?
No, certainly not, Your Honor, but, well, probably not. But, however,
Apparently not, I would say.
we do, however, think that what she was doing...
What's unnormal about a vegan license plate?
We think that it's perfectly acceptable for a vegan license plate to be published. When that vegan license plate attempts
That's not what she said.
So it was not normal. What's
Wait,
abnormal about it?
she
What was
also
abnormal about it?
She also specified in that same interview that she would be open to a vegan license plate that didn't use the word murder and didn't attempt to express its message in such an inflammatory manner. So it's not the case that the state is simply opposed to vegan viewpoints completely. The state has made very clear that it would be willing to accept a plate submission from the respondent organization. We simply think that the state has a legitimate interest in ensuring that these license plate messages fall above a minimum threshold of discourse and that the plates essentially don't become a means of creating additional partisan debate where the government has never intended it to.
Now
Why did
you're-
she bother with an explanation if this is government speech?
Well, we think that it's only beneficial that the government wants to enact a policy in which it does provide means of endorsement, but also provides clear, transparent criteria that individual plates must meet in order to receive the government's endorsement.
Then it's a flop at that point. Clear, transparent criteria?
Well, again, Your Honor, I think in this case, although the standards do leave some room for discretion in the hands of Ms. Springfield, these terms that she uses, like potentially offensive, controversial, or inappropriate, are similar to other statutes that like obscenity laws or what the
here's one of
FCC
the ones she turned down. She turns down from Children International something that says, real help, real hope.
That's right, Your Honor.
Now, how is somebody supposed to know that that is impermissible?
Well,
Whereas
in that case,
Save the Lemurs is okay.
well, in that case, Your Honor, that particular plate you're referring to was submitted by an organization whose primary purpose didn't benefit the local community of Ames. One of the primary criteria that Ames sought to enforce when enacting its program was that each of the organizations that received benefits from this program did in fact benefit the local community.
Well, that sounds like an after-the-fact rationalization to me, because anybody who wanted to approve that license plate would say real help, real hope, would think that the people of Ames were being told, lend a hand and you're going to help your community, and this is how we want things to run in Ames. And so, sure, we can look at each of these things and come up with a post hoc rationalization, but I don't think that gives people the clear and transparent standards you just mentioned.
Your Honor, I don't think this is a post hoc rationalization. The statute itself, I think it's on page 13 of the Joint Appendix, specifies that organizations which are applying to this program have to meet certain criteria. Among those criteria are that it primarily benefits the local community of Ames. That's the purpose of the specialty license plate program. In other words, we think that it was clear from the beginning in the program's inception that what the program was trying to do here was enable charities that benefited the local community to promote their organizations by creating these license plates that would bring in additional funding and allow them to get additional publicity.
So you've given up on the idea that this is viewpoint neutral, it sounds to me.
I think
you really seem to have defaulted back to your co-counsel's argument.
I think the reasons why we restricted the respondent's plate in particular were viewpoint neutral. The reasons we did so were simply because they chose to express their view in a manner that was derogatory, in a way that was inappropriate for the forum, because they chose to use violent language, which they explicitly stated sought to invoke images of the torture and slaughter of animals.
Maybe they were just, fans of the group The Smiths.
I don't get the reference, Your Honor.
It's an alternative British rock group who have an album called Meat is Murder that was issued in the 1980s.
I think I actually stumbled upon that in my Wikipedia search, Your Honor. I do think, however, that...
do you think your statute could be constitutionally applied to bumper stickers?
I don't think it could, Your Honor. I think bumper stickers never began as government speech. The government never exercises control over them, so it certainly couldn't be government speech. To the extent...
All the arguments you make for the license plate, you could make for bumper stickers, right? You could say, charge $40 for a bumper sticker, and you can have a bumper sticker, and we'll have the same criteria, the inoffensiveness and all that.
Well, I think in this case, Your Honor, I think what you're suggesting is that Ames could create a bumper sticker program of its own. And then if it said something like Ames endorses a certain organization, it certainly would be government speech in that case. Ames wouldn't be forced to produce bumper stickers that it didn't endorse.
So as long as they put so they could have this program and have the name Ames on the bumper sticker, and then it would be fine.
Well, that's right, Your Honor. The government couldn't be compelled to produce bumper stickers, but it couldn't restrict private drivers from affixing bumper stickers produced by other private parties. Because the bumper sticker is private speech, Your Honor. And
no, but it would confuse everybody, right?
I don't think so, Your Honor. The confusion here is that...
I don't get the difference between the license plate and the bumper sticker. I can see why they don't want to have a bunch of warring license plates. I understand that. The vegans and the meat eaters at each other's throat. I understand that. But that would be true if they had a bumper sticker program.
It would be...
argue, look, we want the bumper sticker to be this, device by which these nonprofit organizations can raise money for in Ames.
Well, Your Honor...
we're going to say we're taking over the bumper sticker franchise, and, if you want to have a bumper sticker on your car, you have to ask for approval.
Well, Your Honor, I think in that case...
Can they do that?
It might be okay if the state wanted to, it was worried about clutter, that it cleared off all bumper stickers.
Is it okay or not okay?
I'm not sure what the contours of that program would be, Your Honor.
It's exactly like this one.
If it's exactly like this one, then I think we wouldn't be as concerned. So, like, for example, if a private bumper sticker didn't have the word Ames on it and didn't suggest that Ames endorsed it,
No, it's
then the government...
identical. It's going to have Ames on the top, just the way this does. It just won't have the numbers.
Your Honor, I think the difference here is that private parties can't produce their own license plates. In other words, there's no opportunity, like the license plates are government issued, they're created by the government, and you can only obtain them through the government. Bumper stickers are available for...
Bans private sale of bumper stickers. Say it's a government monopoly.
Well, in that case, Your Honor, that restriction might fall under the restriction, the constitutional problems faced in the case City of Ladue v. Galeo, where essentially what happened was the court recognized that the state couldn't prevent all homeowners from putting up signs in their front yard, because that would be a restriction that unduly burdened the freedom of speech.
But cars are different. I mean, I don't see any reason why Ames couldn't say, we don't want vehicles being cluttered up with all sorts of things pasted onto them. The only thing you can have is the things that we sell you.
Again, as long as, I think the problem here would be that the government would be contradicting itself when it said it was worried about clutter and then authorized bumper stickers that would cause the very same clutter. I think it might be okay for...
One
Excuse me, Your
bumper
Honor?
sticker per car.
Again, if that restriction was applied viewpoint neutrally, it might be okay. If it wasn't applied viewpoint neutrally, then it might not be a permissible one. We don't think that the government can disfavor speech, but in this case, we weren't disfavoring vegan viewpoints in particular. We were rejecting Ames was rejecting the vegan viewpoint because Ames essentially sought to provoke a fight where none had existed before.
Would a car owner have a First Amendment right to say anything that he or she wanted on a bumper sticker?
I think that the state couldn't restrict that, Your Honor. I think that unless, I see my time is up. May I finish answering your question?
Sure.
I think that in that particular case, a car owner would have a strong private speech interest in the particular message and couldn't be restricted from delivering that. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Seeley. So, Ms. Phoenix?
Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the court, my name is Candace Phoenix, and along with my co-counsel Hagan Scotton, we are representing Respondent, Humans Against Consumption of Animals. I will argue that this program is not government speech, while my co-counsel will argue that Petitioner Springfield impermissibly discriminated against HACA on the basis of its viewpoint.
Do you recognize any right in government to censor license plates?
Yes, Your Honor. The government has the ability to censor license plates on a variety of bases. For example, taking from this court's prior case law, if the government wanted to keep obscenities off of the license plates, curse words, scatological references, we would assume...
Curse words?
Yes, Your Honor.
Well, what would be the basis for keeping curse words off?
Well, as this court recognized, when we have...
government keep curse words out of newspapers?
No, Your Honor, it cannot keep them out of newspapers, but there's a difference in terms of the type of forum that the government has opened up here. It's opened up a limited public forum wherein it retains a heightened amount of control over the forum, but a level of control that doesn't allow it to discriminate on the basis of viewpoint.
But I want to go back to the government speech point at a more general level, because you're moving us right away into the various kinds of forum analysis, whatever one may think of that. You would agree, would you not, that if Ames just wanted to have license plates that had some alphanumeric combination, it said Ames at the top, it's some little sticker, you know, to show that you'd renewed each year, that's all it has to do, right?
Yes, Your Honor, there is no constitutional right to a license plate.
So why, when they decide to stamp out some license plates that have a different picture on it, aren't they still, in fact, doing the same thing? They're creating an identifier for the car, and maybe one of them has a cow on it, and one of them has a fish on it, and so on and so forth, but they're really just having a somewhat more elaborate state-controlled identification program, thus government speech.
If the state were to, of its own volition, create the license plates that you just mentioned, we would assume that that program would be government speech.
But isn't that inconsistent with Sumner? Sumner says it doesn't matter if private parties have helped the government, or indeed, in that case, even donated the whole monument, the Ten Commandments monument.
That's true, Your Honor, but the difference between this case and Sumner is one of purpose. The state of Ames has specifically said that the purpose of this program is to facilitate private speech, when in the statute, in its stipulations at the district court, and in its press release that it distributes both online and in every DMVS office throughout the state.
But your position, you just kill the program. And I can see why you might prefer to kill the program than to be excluded from participation. But they can't run a program with no control over content except, I don't know, dirty words or something. They can't, because otherwise everybody will be, as Justice Wood pointed out, you only need 500 people for a license plate. You're going to have thousands of, everybody at each other's throats, right? So the state would say, no, we can't be involved with this.
Well, Your Honor, we don't believe that allowing HACA into this program would force the closure of the program, and we know that
No, I
that's...
think it would, because you'll have people who say, kick out the immigrants, right? Kick out the immigrants. You have that, right?
Well,
Couldn't you?
Well, Your Honor, there
No
have been...
immigrants.
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
You say, could you have something like expel all immigrants from the United States?
Well, this statute actually puts forth a restriction that no one can be...
No, what do you regard as constitutionally permissible? You just said obscenity and swear words, but what else can they restrict?
Well,
If you say they can't discriminate on the basis of the content, then you're going to have all sorts of ugly stuff, right?
Not necessarily, Your Honor,
But you
because...
can find 500 people to agree to anything.
That's true, Your Honor, which is why the majority of the restrictions, in fact, you're not making a facial challenge in this case, because we believe the restrictions can be constitutionally applied. We just don't believe they were...
Pardon?
Excuse
So
me?
you accept offensiveness as a valid criterion?
It could be constitutionally applied. It was not in this case, and we know that because Petitioner Springfield has told us so. But in terms of the larger idea of the government speech doctrine, the key question here is why Ames opened up the program, and it has told us why it did so. And
But
it
it's
was
telling you something different now. I mean, aren't we supposed to pay attention to the actual decisions of the authorized official of Ames, the Director Springfield? I mean, you're saying, well, the statute says one thing, but she's the one in charge of running the program, and she's saying that you're wrong about its purpose.
Well, it's not just the statute, Your Honor. In fact, Petitioner Springfield has put out a press release stating that the purpose of the program is to spread nonprofit organizations' messages. And this is not just a press release that she put out once.
Any nonprofit organization with any message?
No, Your Honor. There's 4 threshold criteria that a nonprofit organization would have to meet in order to become eligible for the program.
So
and we
if it
don't
was
contest.
join the Ku Klux Klan, would that be all right?
No, Your Honor, we don't believe that that would be, or the state could keep that out.
Why?
There's a restriction in the statute that states that any license plate message cannot be disparaging of a race, religion, national
Well, it just
orientation.
says join the Ku Klux Klan. Maybe they've reformed.
Well, part of the threshold criteria state that the organization has to be one that is beneficial to Ames, and it has to run programs that are beneficial to Ames. And presumably, we could imagine some program or some group that may be beneficial to the state of Ames, such as the Ku Klux Klan, but it's unlikely that they would ever cross the threshold criteria.
What is it that made this, in your view, not government speech?
The key question is what Ames has told us, both in its express intent and the structure of the program. And that's what underlies the entirety of this court's precedent. For example, in Velasquez, in highlighting...
No, but at the end of the day, the state, produced the license plate, it controlled the design, it sold it, it required all motor vehicle operators to use it, and a certain percentage of them had these messages on it. Why isn't that government speech?
Well, Petitioner claims that the government retains sole control over the program and takes sole responsibility for license plates in many of the ways that you just mentioned. But we know, in fact, that they don't take sole responsibility. And we know that because they require
Well, why is
private...
sole responsibility the criteria for government speech?
we don't believe
suppose, all these ideas, certainly an idea doesn't have to be one that originates with the government to be protected under the rubric of government speech, does it?
That's certainly true, Your Honor, but we can look to the structure of the program to see a number of ways in which Ames has created something that they claim is government speech, but in fact relies almost entirely on the volition of private entities.
So
But-
what?
but the
So what?
fact that-
All you're saying is that they, at the end of the day, use ideas that are not necessarily original. How does the lack of originality turn this into something other than government speech if the government is doing the speaking?
It's not the lack of originality, Your Honor. It's what the state of Ames has told the public. And we know from the...
What difference does that make?
It makes a difference because it creates a First Amendment harm when the government tells the public that its purpose...
tells the public? Does anybody know about this?
Yes, Your Honor. Everybody knows about this program that goes for a license plate.
What's the evidence that everybody knows about it?
Because we know that the press release that Petitioner Springfield has put out is on the website, and it comes up whenever you have to go and get a new license plate. We know that the state of Ames puts it in every single DMVS office throughout the state for people to see and peruse when they're going for a license plate. So they've advertised this very pervasively as a program.
But there's a basic fact you have really danced around, and that is that at the top of this license plate that you want, which is Exhibit F on page 27, is the word Ames. I mean, if that weren't there, then it would look a lot like the bumper sticker that we were just discussing. But Ames is right there, and Ames doesn't want its name associated with this meat is murder. Ames might have all sorts of responsible reasons, by the way, for thinking that veganism wasn't something to be encouraged, but it's really just saying this is, you know, an inappropriately in-your-face kind of slogan. We don't want this one with our name associated with it.
Well, I would say a few things to that, Your Honor. The first being that the statute actually requires that the nonprofit organization be identified on the statute. So even if you could hold that example up again, you would see that HACA's name is right next to the
Well, I
message.
see it. It's
That's so
HACA. It doesn't look at all like an
really-
organization's
It looks
name.
like part of the license, you know, part of the bureaucratic information on it. It's very, very bad plate, I must say. Look, why didn't you try to work out something with them? You've conceded that they can censor license plates, and you've allowed offensiveness as a criterion. And so why isn't it your duty before you try to upset this apple cart, go to them and say, all right, you say meat is murder is inflammatory. Okay, let's suggest something else. So you could probably come up with something that would be better than this. So.
Do you think they would have turned down eat no meat?
There's no way for us to know that, Your Honor.
Oh, but there is, because you jumped the gun. When her press release said, suggested that there would be possibility of a vegetarian plate, you go back and say, all right, you said so, you didn't like meat as murder. Well, we have some other things for you. Eat broccoli, not bacon, right? Maybe she'd let that through.
Well, the problem with such a framework would be essentially chilling of free speech, because now every organization...
But you said they can censor if they don't allow offensive... I mean, if they don't allow swear words, that renders half the population speechless right there. But you permit that. So you're permitting censorship. Once you say censorship is okay and offensiveness is okay, doesn't that put on you a duty to try to work something out that's mutually acceptable, or that it's not your first choice, it's your second choice, but it gets the message across and it satisfies their offensiveness concerns?
Well, certainly we do concede that the state of Ames has several tools in its arsenal to censor certain license plates, but we do put forth that they can't do so in a viewpoint discriminatory manner, which they have done in this case.
Why? Why? That's not clear, because she said suppose you submitted an alternative that didn't have the word murder in it, and she said that's fine. Then where would be the viewpoint discrimination? It would be discrimination about, upsetting people, and you don't want violent stuff on license plates. It scares the driver behind you. So.
Well, the reason we know that it's viewpoint discrimination, and my co-counsel will address this in further detail, but we know that because of what Petitioner Springfield actually said in the Ames News article.
Well, she said two things, right? About not thinking this was abnormal behavior or something. Of course, it is obviously minority behavior, not the most common thing, especially the vegans as opposed to just the ordinary vegetarians. But she also said, maybe we can work something out. So why don't you try to work it out before you bring a lawsuit?
Well, we would also note that the statute requires that once we've been rejected, we have to wait an entire year before applying again. So that's quite a burden for HACA to bear, to wait an entire year before they could, quote, work on the message with Petitioner Springfield. But I think it's important that even the fact that we're asking these questions demonstrate that maybe it's actually not government speech.
But what if, I mean, I want to go back to your notion that it's somehow wrong for her to be criticizing an alternative lifestyle. Suppose there was a subset of an Islamic community in Ames that still adhered to traditional views of polygamy, and they wanted the license plate to say polygamy is best. And they're in Ames, and so, you know, we have the local connection and so on. Do you think she could say, I don't want polygamy as best on a license plate because it's just too fringe a lifestyle for Ames?
Well, certainly if her reasoning is that it's a fringe lifestyle, then that would almost by definition be viewpoint discrimination, because she's saying that it's not a majority view, and therefore we shouldn't have it on a license plate.
That's why your position, if accepted, would simply kill the program.
Not necessarily, Your Honor. In fact, we know that programs can operate under the
It's
public.
going to be a vast cacophony. People are driving down, and they see meat is murder, and eat meat, and polygamy is great. They're not allowed to do gay marriage. Well, no, you'd allow that. So you have gay marriage, you have polygamy.
Well, Your Honor, we know that the circuit courts that have considered this question and found that it's actually facilitation of private speech, we know that the states in those...
But you're going to kill the program. Don't you think that's realistic?
Well, Your Honor, we know that the states that have dealt with this, have dealt with the programs under a finding of facilitation of private speech have still kept their license plate programs open, and they're still operating. So we know that there are states that have been able to manage these in constitutional ways, even after a finding that it's not government speech.
But they've changed them. Would you say that a program where the state legislature has to approve all license plates, as is the case in some states, was government speech?
That would certainly trend much more towards government speech, Your Honor, but the
And that's
purpose-
what some states have defaulted to.
Well, even that one change criteria wouldn't automatically convert it into a government speech case. It certainly would make it a closer call. But we would maintain that if the government is still...
So it's delegation that's the problem, in your view.
Well, the problem is that the state of Ames is telling the public one thing while it's claiming another behind closed doors. It's telling the public that the facilitation, that the purpose
Well,
is
does
to
that have
facilitate...
constitutional implications or statutory implications or what? So, look, I mean, politicians do that all the time.
It has constitutional implications.
I'm told.
It has constitutional implications because what the government is doing, if it were allowed to keep HACA's message out or messages like it, is essentially skewing the marketplace of ideas, because it's telling the public that several organizations, if they are eligible, would be allowed to join this program if they meet certain checklist criteria. And if now it claims that it actually is government speech and they can reject whatever they want, then they've told the public that it's a free and open program, but it's really not.
But they'd have to close it because your meat is murder, right? So Burger King would go crazy, and they'd go to the legislature and say, you can't allow this stuff, you know. People would be frightened to eat our burgers.
Well, certainly...
It would enmesh they want to have innocuous messages, really. What's wrong with having a policy? Just innocuous messages, something no one or very few people could disagree. Even you wouldn't disagree. Like their fishing license, it just says fishing is good for the heart. It doesn't say, you know, you should eat fish.
Well, certainly that's a natural implication, Your Honor. But the key question here, again, is what is Ames telling the public? The question is whether or not they are telling the public that it's facilitation of private speech, and that's exactly what they're doing. So if it wishes to have simply innocuous messages, it's certainly able to do that if it were to craft a statute that actually did so. But in this case, of course, we know that
So
it's
that's
not...
all right? They can have a statute which says innocuous messages?
Well, we know, Your Honor, that the state could, for example, keep out political battles, keep them off of the license plates.
Why?
We know that...
How could it do that?
Well, the reason in that case is that there's a concern that the government would be possibly enmeshing itself in political battles if it did so. And of course, it wants to maintain some sort of level that doesn't create a fight on the license
Well,
plate.
you don't
Doesn't
think
this
the
all
meat
sugge-
people and versus the vegetarian, you don't think that's political?
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I couldn't hear
sorry.
both of you.
You don't think that's political?
No, Your Honor, in terms of political, the restrictions are more, they don't want the Democrats to have their own license plates and the Republicans to have their own license plates. And
But they want the vegetarians to have their own license plates, the meat eaters and the polygamists their own license plates?
Well, none of those are political messages. All of them are, they're
You don't
speaking...
think polygamy and gay marriage and so on are intensely political issues?
Well, HACA has put forth a message whose purpose is to encourage people to think about their consumption in terms of their health, in terms of the environment, in terms
Can
of
they ban the gay marriage license as they did? Is that okay?
We don't believe so, Your Honor. And I see that I'm out of time, so if I could just close with one thought. Ames has told the public that its purpose is facilitation of private speech. And now, behind the closed doors, behind the veil, is doing something very different. And in fact, is creating a fraud on the public. Thank you, Your
Okay,
Honors.
thank you, Ms. Phoenix. Mr. Scotton?
Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the Court, the purpose and effect of the Director's actions is to exclude HACA's views from the forum. And
But I don't understand what the forum, I mean, you're defining the forum as something the size of a license plate that goes on a car. And I'm having a very hard time understanding how this in any way impedes HACA's ability to tout veganism or anybody else's ability to tout what they want, because people plaster stuff all over their cars. They can take out ads, they can Twitter, they can blog, they can do all sorts of things. This is such a minor bit of space that's being restricted. What difference does it make?
Well, if I can answer that in two parts, Your Honor. First, in general, this Court, I think rightly, hasn't tolerated small infringements just because the speaker could speak elsewhere. Certainly, if HACA was banned from only one park in all of America, it would have no significant effect on their ability to propagate their message. We still wouldn't tolerate that as it would on the basis of principle. Secondly, we do think there is a significant loss.
But this isn't the same as one park even. You know, here's your car. I don't know how small your car is, I mean, but most people's car has room for a little bit more than just the license plate. I mean, you can get your message across to the other people who are stuck in rush hour traffic just as easily with the bumper stickers you can by having a license plate that has HACA meat is murder on it.
But being excluded from this program, Your Honor, will harm HACA's ability to get that message out in several ways.
It only harms it if you really want to get it out with the word Ames across the top of the license plate.
Not necessarily, Your Honor. Many people may not be willing to buy bumper stickers who are willing to buy plates, since everyone has to have a license plate on their car.
But they may not be willing to pay the extra money that Ames charges for these special plates. You can get I mean, actually, Ames is a bargain. In Illinois, these things cost $78, but in Ames, for $15, you can just get your plate, and so if you're willing to part with $40, which would buy quite a few bumper stickers, by the way, you get these special plates.
I think that identifies a second cost. As the statute says, it also exists to raise funds. And this Court has found before that soliciting charitable contributions is also a protected First Amendment right. It seems hard to imagine that people would pay $40 for a bumper sticker, whereas you point out people are willing to pay more.
Your message is so terrible. You know, the police would be very upset to see the word murder on a license plate.
Your Honor, there's two problems with the petitioner's advance of that claim. The first is that it's largely post hoc. There is nothing in the letter itself, the rejection letter, which is all that HACA would know had it not brought this suit. There's nothing in the letter.
But it's kind of a manufactured suit. You choose an inflammatory license plate, provoking her reaction, and then you refuse to try to negotiate some acceptable plate. And at the same time, your co-counsel conceding that it's permissible to censor license plates. So it seems there are a lot you should have done before you made this into a federal case.
Well, I would like to point out, Your Honor, there's nothing in the record to suggest that we refuse negotiations, nor did the state offer them, which is particularly striking, given the state has asserted that it can change wording. It never identified any problem with HACA's wording. It simply barred the plate, which presumably leads to a one-year process before it can appeal. There is no administrative appeals process in the statute.
I think the group could conceivably have come up with a different, more acceptable message.
I think, Your Honor, that's saying they could have. It doesn't say we'd be willing to accept.
And she said, well, wait a second.
Sorry, Your Honor.
She said, any phrase that contains the word murder simply does not have a place on our highways, which I think is true.
Well, Your Honor, she only said that in an interview once the suit had been brought.
Well, I don't care if she said it one time or 50 times. She made a very good point. You don't want the word murder on a license plate.
And Your Honor, if the state of Ames...
So I don't know where you get the idea that the meat is murder is going to be a great slogan for a license plate.
I'm not sure where it was originally developed. It is on HACA's website. It's not something they just manufactured for the purpose of this plate. It apparently is one of their key slogans. But in response to your point about the meat is murder, if the state of Ames had a broadly applicable rule that was prospectively enacted, like the blue lists that the petitioner referred to in their plate, this would be a different case, because then they wouldn't be targeting a specific viewpoint.
Well, now, what is the rule you're suggesting for them?
States which have blue lists, it certainly list a whole category of words that cannot be used on a license plate. That's different because it's not used as a tool just to exclude one viewpoint. We think when this court said that one should be suspicious...
So that would be fine for them to have a list of words
That's right, Your
that
Honor.
included murder.
So this is your argument, really, that there are no ascertainable standards, and if the state publishes a list with all of the forbidden words, somewhat longer than George Carlin's list, I assume, but that would be all right, because you'd have advance notice, you could draft around it, you could...
Then it wouldn't be a tool for censoring views. I should say, Your Honor, obviously some things you couldn't do on a list. If you said we're going to exclude lists, if the university in Rosenberg, for example, said we're going to have a list of prescribed words, and those words are going to be Christ, Christian, and Jesus, that would transparently still be viewpoint discrimination. But generally speaking, a word like murder, which isn't associated with any viewpoint that could reasonably be expected in, of course that could be banned prospectively. The problem is here, they just banned HACA with no administrative appeal, and now they're asserting this ground of murder, which doesn't appear anywhere in the statute. It's not in the statute or in the policy. It's never been used as a ground to reject another license plate. It's only appearing now. I think it goes right to when this court said attempts to ban a specific word or sometimes actually an attempt to ban the idea it expresses. I think
So
that's what
I'm
we're
just
seeing
trying to
here.
figure out if you're really bringing a procedural case or if you're bringing a substantive case. You're bringing a case that just says this program didn't have ascertainable standards, this program left us playing a game of 20 questions, we come up with a new slogan every year and then we're told that that one's no good either, or whether you're really just saying that you have a right, because your view, your organization's view is that meat is murder. Your members have a very strong view about consumption of animal products. Is your point, the substantive point, that you have a right to get that message out on the license plates?
Our point, Your Honor, is that HACA has a right to get its vegan viewpoint out. If there was some general ban that caused it to have to rephrase that
But you're dancing
specific...
away from the murder point. I mean, suppose every member of your organization stands up and testifies, I think eating meat is exactly the same thing as if I went and killed my next door neighbor and was eating him. Maybe they think that, and so they want meat is murder on the license plate. Are you defending their right to have that slogan?
As the statute is now written, Your Honor, yes. We think it's important, again, to quote this court from Rosenberg, when this court said, once the court sets up a limited forum, it must obey the lawful boundaries it has itself set. So as it's now written, we think HACA must be allowed in. We're not asserting a blanket rule for everyone to say murder anytime they want on a license plate, by any means.
But the problem with this program is that it locks these license plates in. If the license plate becomes unapproved, then everybody who's gone out and bought it gets to keep it on their car until it disintegrates.
Yes, Your Honor. Because the statute is not sort of artfully drafted, there is some risk. But I would submit that the risk of 500 vegans with a license plate that says murder on it that people don't like is considerably less than the risk of allowing them to censor speech in order to keep out this word that's unpleasant to people among 500 license plates that survive any post-legislative enactment.
Aren't you arguing at cross purposes with your co-counsel? Because she said it's fine to forbid offensive license plates. Then it has to be a matter of administrative discretion. What is offensive? Unless you really think the Constitution should be interpreted to require absolute certainty in the statute, so they have a list of the forbidden words, 100,000 forbidden words.
I would
But if
say
they just say offensive, why can't they then leave it to the administrator to say, yeah, murder is an offensive term on a license plate?
if the statute has no contour to it beyond simply an assertion of offensiveness.
Well, I thought your co-counsel said, yeah, offensiveness is fine. How do you, okay, so you have offensiveness. You can list 100,000 words, murder and all its synonyms in 1,000 different languages and so on. What's the intermediate position?
I think the intermediate position would be something that has some sort of generally recognizable standard.
Like what?
Well, for example, in this case, just to give an example of how it could have worked better, there's a committee of 5 legislators that is required to first approve any plate design before it goes on to the director. And in part of that, they have to make a finding that it's not offensive and it's consistent with community standards. That committee approved this plate initially, and then the director rejected it. So if it's a single person, a single unelected official who can
Well, now
determine offensiveness...
you've switched from the question, what is the required detail in the statute, to what kind of procedures might enable a vague standard to satisfy constitutional norms, right? So which is it? So are you giving up on having a more specific criterion than offensiveness and saying we're going to have all these layers of approval, or?
I think there might be multiple ways it could be done. I mean, the list obviously provides a lot of criteria, but as you say, it's difficult to actually make such a list. Having multiple layers, and one that the petitioner themselves draws attention to, is the idea of meaningfully informing a rejected group of exactly why they were rejected. In this case, HACA didn't find out that murder was the problem, if that specifically is the problem, until the interview, which the interview was only triggered by a lawsuit.
But the relief you're asking for is the license plate. I mean, you're not asking for hearings, you're not asking for other kinds of intermediate relief. You want that license plate out there.
That's correct, Your Honor. Because we think as it's now structured, there's no reasonable viewpoint neutral grounds on which the director could keep it out. We think even if you take
So
the
if
word...
we think there's any nuance that stands in the way of your getting that license plate out there, then we should rule for the petitioners.
I don't think we'd say that, Your Honor.
I doubt you would.
The problem in this case, Your Honor, would be they're objecting to this specific message as a way to keep the group out, using the 1-year statutory delay, the fact that there are no meaningful notice requirements if you can simply give blanket notification of offensiveness, while at the same time saying we're excluding your group on the basis of viewpoint.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, are you saying more than you simply didn't get what you were otherwise entitled to under the statute?
I think that sounds like a fair summary, Your Honor.
So you're not really, you're kind of easing off a full-blown constitutional argument.
Well, the fact that they are not adhering to the statute is the constitutional problem. Where the state is using its statute to let in certain views, whether it be the fisheries institution or the Darwinians, but not other views, that's when you have the First Amendment harm, because it's allowing the state to favor certain ideas of private speakers above others.
That sounds to me like a concession, though, that you know you can't attack the state for the way it's administering its own statute. Because otherwise, if the state just isn't applying the statute appropriately, I think, as Justice Parker says, you'd have a statutory case. But you're kind of agreeing that you can't really second-guess their interpretation of their own statute.
I guess what I would say
You don't like what it means from a First Amendment point of view, but the statute means what they say it means.
Not looking within sort of the boundaries of the state. What we're saying is what Ames is doing here is unconstitutional, whether it's because they are getting their statute wrong or because the statute itself is unconstitutional. I'm not sure the burden is on us to point that out.
Well, it is on you in a way, because federal courts don't sit around and tell states how to interpret their own statutes.
Well, the way the state is applying the statute, Your Honor, to exclude one view on an otherwise includable subject is unconstitutional. It may be...
What if the fishing people want to say, eat fish or die of heart disease? Now, could the state say, fish is fine, we have this nice fishing plate about heart, but we can't allow that. That's too upsetting to people. Is there anything wrong with that?
I'm not sure under the current statute we can rely on anything more than the fact that the state could necessarily keep that out, despite the fact that the language is rather strong.
You say they couldn't keep it out.
What, I'm sorry, Your Honor?
They couldn't keep it out because the statute isn't detailed enough or doesn't have enough procedures to prevent abuse. That's your basic concern.
I would also say, Your Honor, it is significant in this case, to this finding, that we know the director is seeking to exclude HACA because of its views, that it said HACA's views can't come in because they cause confusion next to those of the dairy and fisheries industries. They've said publicly that they're going to exclude license plates that embrace alternate lifestyle choices. So you wouldn't accept confusion
as a criterion?
I would not. There's nothing in the statute, Your Honor, that says...
No. You wouldn't accept a statute which used confusion as a criterion. Is that correct?
Your Honor, I think much like controversial, that's one of those terms that could be applied in a legitimate way, but often wouldn't be. I mean, if it was a truly confusing message that was nonsense that made no sense, it misled people as to what the laws of the state of Ames were or something to that effect, that would be a viewpoint-neutral application of the term.
Right, there are two types of confusion we could be talking about. The state says it would be confusing if the state were perceived as both saying eat fish and saying eat no fish. If it's private people, some private people eat fish, other private people eat soy all the time. So, there's that level of confusion, and then there's just looking at a slogan and thinking, huh? What does that mean? And I don't think you're talking about the second type. I think
Right.
you're talking about the first kind.
The former type, Your Honor, where the state effectively says, this is the view we endorse and we don't want anybody confusing
So I
other
assume
views.
you reject the whole idea of confusion if it's not the state's speech to begin with.
That's right, Your Honor. I'm not sure you could ever use confusion as a way to say, well, this is a view we prefer, so we're going to censor this view because it disagrees with our preferred view.
Can the, Ms. Springfield offer reasons for turning you down that are not explicit in the statute?
I think she could. She has to cite one of the 11 statutory reasons. But within that, she could explain how we qualified for that particular statutory reason, as she's attempted to do in some cases. And some of these are problematic. For example, when she asserts that our slogan is derogatory, because in the policy, that's actually a distinct grounds from offensive, controversial, or inappropriate. So it would seem to be excluded by the fact she cited one, that she's now citing another. But in terms of explaining how something is offensive, if another organization submitted an obscene license plate, and she explained, this license plate is obscene, she made reference to why it was obscene, certainly she could do that, Your Honor. However,
And if she says the wrong thing, you can have the obscene license plate all around the state. That's your view.
I don't think so, Your Honor. There's a difference
Strange.
when there's
She
some...
gives the wrong reason, then
The Klan is riding through the streets of Ames.
I think when there is an objective reason that would clearly keep the plate out, and the petitioners cite the example of if HACA didn't have 500 signatures. If she said, you don't have 500 signatures, then that's fine. HACA can't get in. Even if she says, you don't have 500 signatures, and by the way, I don't like vegans. That still keeps HACA out. The problem in this case is she said, I want to keep vegans out, and then she's referenced this statutory provision that's very vague. This court has observed that those words are vague before, and that appears to be solely within her discretion, that she alone can determine what content is or is not offensive.
Well, it's government speech, right? She's the government.
Well, we don't believe it is government speech. She's already, and the state of Ames already said, we're promoting private speakers here. We're allowing private organizations to make their messages, and then we're allowing them to put it out. So until now, it wasn't government speech. It appears that the government is trying to make this government speech in order to allow it to viewpoint
To win
discriminate.
the lawsuit.
Yes, Your Honor. That's right, Your Honor. We don't think that under these present facts that either is government speech, and it's rather clear she is seeking to keep HACA out with specific reference to their viewpoint, and then citing
well,
this.
what about having a trial to determine that? You keep speculating as to what she's thinking.
Well, I think, Your
Have a
Honor,
trial.
courts will seldom see evidence this clear of viewpoint discrimination. If the state can say,
Well, I don't know. I usually give a person a chance to, be examined and testify to what she was saying. Is she a lawyer?
it's uncertain. Your
Well,
Honor.
maybe she's not a lawyer. So she doesn't know how to
Harsh words.
avoid giving evidence to the others to a lawyer.
I think that gets right to the, if I can answer briefly, Your Honor, I think that gets right to the harm you're talking about. She sought to exclude them due to their viewpoint. I'm not sure we need to give her another chance to come up with a more reasonable justification. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Scott, and we'll hear from rebuttal from Mr. Seeley.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Justice. From the inception of the Ames Specialty License Plate Program, Ames has made it clear that it was designed to endorse specific viewpoints that Ames sought to promote. It also made it very clear that offensive, controversial, and inappropriate plates were not permitted. Far from constituting a fraud on the public,
Well, what about Mr. Scotton's point that it's pretty obvious from the record that she just decided this on the basis of some personal hostility to vegetarianism?
well, Your Honor, the basis
But
of
is that okay? Maybe that's irrelevant. Maybe your view is that's irrelevant, what her motives were.
well, I think the personal opposition that she may have to veganism wouldn't be a factor unless it was the only reason that she gave
All
for
right,
exclusion.
suppose-
Why
That's the
would that
only
matter?
reason.
Why would that matter?
Yeah.
Excuse me, Your Honor?
Why would that matter, whether it was the only reason?
Oh, if there were legitimate content-based reasons for excluding the message, we think that at a minimum, this court should recognize that Ames is entitled to do so. However, we also
But
think
you,
that...
you started out by saying that Ames has made it clear that this was Ames speaking, but it seems to me Ames has done nothing of the sort. If Ames wanted this to be its speech, it could have said, you know, we are adopting a new license plate program, and here's our state suggestion box, you know, for what license plates we ought to have. And you know, we'll throw some of the money in the direction of people who win the lottery, and we accept one of your suggestions. That's not at all what they did. They said, we're going to let organizations promulgate their messages.
Well, Your Honor, I think several policy provisions indicate that Ames did intend to endorse the organizations here. It specifies that the primary purpose of the program is to promote service to the Ames community. It notes that no organizations that are contrary to Ames public policy will be admitted. It notes that controversial messages are excluded. It notes that the committee has to approve every message for being consistent with the
But
state's
then
best interests.
we circle back to lemurs, and we're just confused.
Well, I think the state is certainly comfortable endorsing the idea that we should save lemurs, Your Honor. I mean, even though
What
it's
is
not...
what is a lemur?
I think a lemur is a type of tailed monkey that's usually found in Madagascar, Your Honor. And even though that might not be the primary purpose of the Ames
And
organization...
that really helps Ames. How?
It's unclear why, Your Honor. There might be a lemur population in Ames. I'm not entirely familiar with the ecology there, but we do think ultimately...
That makes your decision about the help, you know, give heart all the more mysterious.
Well, Your Honor, that particular organization focused on donations to children in other countries, and the purpose of the
Unlike
program...
the lemurs, I guess.
Well, the record doesn't contain any information about the lemur population in Ames, but...
You could take judicial notice that Madagascar is quite a long way away.
I think there might be
It's
maybe...
a zoo animal.
It could possibly be related
But
to that, Your Honor.
I didn't understand your answer to Justice Parker's question. So his question was, if this were just the manifestation of personal hostility by Miss Springfield, and you said something about content-based, why would that make a difference? I thought your notion was she's the state, and any position that she endorses is state policy. I mean, some might be unconstitutional if she, you know, wanted to have an established church, but if she just has sided with the meat eaters against the vegetarians, for whatever reason, why isn't that? I thought you regarded that as her right. Her constitutional
My time
right.
is up, Your Honor. May I answer
Yeah,
your
yeah,
question? Well, I think the distinction here is that at the very most, even if this program created the most protections for private speech, then the fact that this message was offensive justifies the government's restriction. We do think that the program was established as a program by which the government could endorse particular messages and make speech selection judgments that could be based on viewpoint. However, we think that at a minimum, Ames had an interest in avoiding this offensive language on license plates.
Well, that's your backup position, in other words.
Oh, yes, Your Honor, but we also think that that ultimately justifies the program any way this court decides to frame the program. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, so thank you very much. So the court will be in recess and will deliberate on its decision.
All rise.
Please be seated. So we have a narrow mandate. We've been told exactly what to do. We've stuck within the terms of, and our duty is to pick the best oralist, the best brief, and the best team overall. And in that order, we're supposed to announce it. So, and I'll just preface it briefly by saying, very, very impressed by the quality of the briefs and the arguments and the preparation of that obviously you put into, and very high quality. And it's a truism, but it is importantly true. These are the quality of the briefs and arguments are far superior to the average in our course. But we had to make a choice, a difficult choice. So. For best oralist, Mr. Scotton. And for the best brief, the petitioner's brief, the opening brief. And for the best overall, best team overall, the respondents. I think Judge Parker and Judge Wood would like to say a few words.
I would just like to echo what Judge Posner has just said. And we were in the back, as you saw, for several minutes trying to make these decisions, and the margin for each of the calls we had to make was very, very narrow. Each of you did a superb job, and unfortunately we had to resolve our mandate, as you've just heard, was to do what we just did, but I don't want any of you leaving here with the idea that in any meaningful sense you're first or second or what have you. You all did a just wonderful job. These were reflected just so much just kind of effort and thought, and for third-year students, you're all extremely precocious and extremely able, and you should all be very proud of yourselves.
I have very little to add to that because I absolutely agree with every word that both Judge Parker and Judge Posner has said. One of the things that was so great about all of the oralists this evening was your ability to answer the questions we were trying to ask. Sometimes that's not easy when two judges are asking something at the same time, or you can feel that the thrust of a question is taking you down a path that you might not want to go down for your side, but you stood up here and you answered the questions. You did a much better job giving a yes or no answer than we sometimes receive from counsel at oral argument, who would prefer to drift off in some sideways direction. And you also did a nice job coming back to where you wanted to be, coming back to your primary point. I mean, you each had it was a wonderful problem, by the way. My compliments to the Ames program for coming up with this problem, to the drafter of the problem, Ms. Patel, to those of you who worked through it. It was a great, well-balanced problem, and it's why we, as Judge Parker said, we really had to give some real thought to who did the most with what was available for that team. And it was a complete pleasure for me to hear all of you your oral argument skills and your brief writing skills are well on the way, and we look forward to seeing you in the future.
Yeah, I'd just like to second what Judge Parker and Judge Wood said. Yes, I thought it was a very, very well-designed case, really, really good case, and I thought it was very good that you had created a record, because I think it's very important for lawyers to be able to exploit a record, even if it's rather brief, but it had, you know, good facts that you could work with. And also, I'll say, based on my experience with judges, certainly with Judge Wood, with whom I've sat many times, that the judges asked the same questions that they would have asked if it were a real case. So there wasn't any concession made to the fact that you're students, and also there were no questions designed to, you know, in a pedagogical sense. They were just the questions the judges that we would ask if we had to wrestle with the merits of the case. You had a realistic experience. You had a lot of tough questions and did very well and augurs very well for your careers. So with that, I think we will bid farewell to all of you.